starting with the first pick here with the Jacksonville Jaguars, Michael, he has Aiden Hutchinson, the Michigan pass rusher, going number 1. Hutchinson has kind of been the favorite in the betting markets to go number 1. He's been the consensus kind of clean prospect, is how I heard a lot of draft media people talk about him. But the timeline of this top overall pick has fascinated me because during the college football season, it was Kayvon Thibodeau. After the college football season, it was Evan Neal. Then it became Akeem Ekwonu after the combine. Then Hutchinson once free agency got underway when Jacksonville tagged Cam Robinson. But like you mentioned, we're hearing rumblings of Trayvon Walker potentially going to Jacksonville here. What do you make of all the different directions that we've gone with this top overall pick? And do you think it is actually down to pass rusher, or do you think the tackles could still be in play?
All right, so let's say you're Trent Baalke. Trent Baalke really doesn't always color inside the lines. He's always been a little bit of a different, he's taken a lot of guys when he was in San Francisco that were injured, trying to get some upside to him. And so, typically he's been a guy that's willing to take some risk. Hutchinson is a guy that doesn't really jump out to you. I think if you study the Georgia tape and really study that tape, he doesn't play to the level that he needs to play to be the first overall pick in the draft. He just doesn't. I mean, the Georgia tape bothered him. And so let's take that Georgia tape. And so then you go to Georgia, and you basically say to the Georgia coaches, hey, can you get me Trayvon Walker rushing against the Georgia lineman? Okay? Mm-hmm. Why am I doing that? Because I want to see an apple to an apple. I want to compare an apple to an apple. Now, I understand one game's for the national championship, but the other games in practice are 4 playing times. So they both mean a lot, right? And then I watch Walker rush against these tackles, and it looks different than Hutchinson. So wait a minute. I'm going to settle. Everybody says Hutchinson's a safe pick. We took a safe pick when I was at the Raiders. We took Robert Gallery. He was anything but safe. He was anything but safe, right? Yeah. He was the consensus safe pick in the draft. You couldn't go wrong taking Gallery.
Yeah, second overall.
Great kid. Tremendous kid. We passed up every quarterback because we didn't want to take a quarterback. Rich Gannon was coming back. Huge mistake, but we took the safe player, the highest player on our board. He wasn't safe. Hutchinson, you're falling in love with his effort. His production against Ohio State was great. His relentless attitude, his willingness to continue to compete. But those aren't like signs that he's the best player in the draft. It's the same thing when you take Baker Mayfield. He wasn't the most talented thrower. Mm-hmm. He wasn't the biggest guy. He wasn't the best athlete. You took him number 1. Like when you turn the card in for number 1, you better make sure you're making a statement. When we turned in Eric Turner's card as the number 2 pick overall in 1991, Eric Turner was legitimately one of the best players. Was going to be one of the top 5 players at his position the minute he came in the league, which he was. Then he got sick, and unfortunately he ended up going to the – But the point here is there's nothing really – that you say, wow, this guy is uniquely talented. He's safe. I don't know if Baalke's a safe guy. I think it could be somebody different. I think it could be Walker. I think it really could be.
Is that what – because when I read up on the draft thing, because I'm trying to prepare, because I like to bet on the NFL draft coming up in a couple of weeks, and everything I read, everything I listen to is that a lot of teams actually have Walker as the number 1 overall player in this draft here, and it's not really what Daniel Jeremiah might say or what Mel Kiper might say, not to kind of throw shade at those guys. But
no, those guys are all entitled to their opinion. And look, I'm not picking on Mel. Mel's done this for so many years. He works at it. He studies the tape. He gives his opinion. But his opinion isn't the gospel. It's not Pro Football Focus. It's not that. It's his opinion. It's one man's opinion, just like this is my opinion. And so, Daniel Jeremiah, same.
Yeah, for your opinion, who would you select number 1?
I think this is a kind of draft. I'm sure if Jacksonville could move out of that spot, they would.
Oh yeah,
because I don't think you need to do it. But if push came to shove, I probably would take the best offensive lineman or defensive lineman that I thought was worthy of the pick. I think certainly I would consider. Now, again, you and I aren't spending time with the players. Mm-hmm. I would spend a lot of time with Walker. Can he handle being the first pick overall? Can he maximize his skill set? Is he going to play hard? I want to know why Thibodeau has disappeared in games. So I would consider those two. Those are two would be I consider. I would consider Gardner the corner even though I don't want to take a corner. I would consider Charles Cross. I would have about 6 or 7 names I would consider. Evan Neal's another guy that everybody thinks is a good player, but they don't think he's going to be an elite player. They think he's good. Everybody thinks, everybody believes Ekwonu is going to be a really good player, but maybe just a guard. He'll go inside to play guard. and that, Charles Cross might be the best tackle out there. He's a 3-year starter, 5-star, really athletic, hasn't even grown into his body yet. I mean, there's a high ceiling. The two players with the highest ceiling might be Walker and Cross.
Wow. Because right now Cross is seen as kind of the third offensive tackle because it's been a lot of jostling between Neal and Ekwonu, but it's fascinating to hear you talk about Cross as potentially the most ready or the guy that's seen as the highest ceiling in terms of a left tackle. Number 2 stood out to me in Mel Kiper's mock draft. It's his 4.0 here. And you talked about considering Gardner there for number 1. He has the Lions taking Gardner at number 2, which I haven't seen that much during this process. And I ask you, would Detroit really do that? I mean, it was just 2 years ago they took Jeff Okudah out of Ohio State at number 3 overall pick. Do they double up there at cornerback in the top 5?
For me, I believe that the corner is a position that maybe not necessarily is easy to find, but you may have more candidates. I think if you're Detroit, you better get a front 7 player. You got to get a front 7. You got to get somebody to rush the passer. Unless we can brush, it doesn't really matter how good we cover, And so Gardner's a really good player. He's long. I would never want to take a corner that high, only because I think, to me, I want one. I mean, we took Antonio Langham, 9th pick overall. He ended up being a good player, not a great player. But, we took Nnamdi Asomugha at the bottom of the first round, and he ended up being a much better player, And so I think there's certainly, based on scheme, you should get one. To me, if I'm Detroit, it's all about the front 7. I'm getting me a defensive lineman that I think is the best rusher in the draft. If it's Hutchinson, I'll take him. If it's Gardner, I'll take him. If it's Thibodeau, I'll take him. I'm going to pick the best rusher.
Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.